Hey friends, this is the Meme Team podcast where we talk about the logic behind virality because marketing isn't just logic, it's culture. And this podcast decodes both. I want to talk about Red Lobster again, Sonia, because I saw that you went and I was instantly jealous.
Yeah, so we went on Friday. You know, Nathan had listened to the podcast episode and he's like, does this mean you're down to go to Red Lobster? He's always trying to get me to go to chains. And I'm always like,
Wait, that's hilarious. I didn't know that.
Yeah, he loves them. But after, talking about this, I was like, you know what? Red Lobster actually sounds pretty good, especially those cheesy biscuits.
Oh,
So I'm
yeah.
happy to say that it actually was quite good. The only thing is when we went on Friday night, they didn't have the 3-course meal available. You know, what is this? False advertising. But then we went back, but it's $21.99 here in LA. Which I was like, that's not fair. But I mean, let's be honest, it's definitely more expensive here in LA. So you got to give it to them. And now that I think about it, $2 more is actually not that bad. But yeah. Point is, we really had a lovely time. It was a great meal. And it was like really tasty. So
what did you order?
we got a little bit of everything. And all of it was really good. Oh, and then he kept the biscuits coming. So we left with the takeaway bag.
So they keep the biscuits coming as though they're regular like breadsticks.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't know that.
So
That's
one thing I
nice.
will say, they have made them smaller, which I don't think was actually that bad because you're getting more because they're smaller. And honestly, we probably shouldn't be eating the big ones anyway. But
Totally. Fair enough.
It was really good.
I want to go. I really want to go.
Yeah,
Okay.
you really should go. Let's dive in. There was pretty big news last week, and that's Taylor Swift buying her masters back. Well, not back. Anyway, buying her masters from Shamrock Capital after they had been sold by Scooter Braun. And so this has been going on for a while, right? Where the whole point of her creating the Taylor's versions was because she wanted to kind of fight back against the fact that she wasn't able to buy her masters when she wanted them. It was lauded by like most of her audience who, was super happy for her. I saw the one TikTok of that, woman going viral because she was crying. But one of the other things that started kind of popping up is the fact that some people were like, oh, she scammed all her audience into buying like new versions of like her music that weren't as good. Like people should feel bad that like, she lied to you. There was even some people coming up and saying like, this was the master plan all along, that she was, trying to do this to like make more money. And I think that it's a little too much to put on her as like, this was, the master plan of like what she was thinking about. So I kind of wanted to talk about this more in terms of how she turned this, was essentially a business problem into a brand power that led her to not only create the Eras tour, but then create the Taylor's versions, have those also be quite successful in their own right, which led her to be able to actually eventually buy the masters themselves. Because now, in the process of all this, she became a billionaire. So now she had the actual money to be able to pay for like the masters, but then also was able to take back the narrative of like her ownership from all this. She transformed this crisis of music ownership into a masterclass in community-driven marketing of, her fans, and then the value creation of like what would only be valuable when she owned it, as opposed to private equity owning it. So let's start with the scam narrative versus reality. I understood what she was trying to do, trying to separate herself from Scooter Braun, who originally brought them. There had been some bad blood between them. So when she wanted to, buy the masters the last time, she kind of spoke about it and wanting to go through the process and all that. And when she wasn't able to do it, this kind of became like an option, which shout out to Kelly Clarkson, who was the original one who had like tweeted about this. This very famous tweet that she put out there like, hey, Taylor Swift, maybe you should think about re-recording your music so that you get to own. Yeah. So that you get to own the process. But I think she kind of understood like what Taylor was going through at the time. So I think let's also talk about previous artists who had, tried to do this. So Prince very famously changed his name for this reason because he wanted to regain control, and then had to start recording under a new name in order to own that music. And then the Beatles very famously also tried to buy their music and had Michael Jackson actually purchase it after a conversation that they were having.
Yeah. Well, you know what? This might sound silly, but I actually did not know that about Prince. I didn't know that was why he changed his name. I thought it was purely artistic.
Yeah. Yeah, very artistic to own his own music. So I think the idea has kind of been bubbling there for like a while. Obviously, there's a lot of people that said, well, she signed, a business contract. This is what it means. You sign the music away and the music company is helping you and helping you market and, all this stuff. And yes, I understand that. But I think part of what has also happened in this is that people are realizing just how controlling some of these music industry contracts are, right?
Yeah.
Like how they kind of really, put like shackles basically on like artists and like what they have to do in order to like meet the contract, and it doesn't really allow them to change anything until they're famous enough to be able to push back or rework the contract in some way. So that's kind of what happened there. And then also you have to remember she first signed when she was a teenager, like super young, right? So to say that, oh, she should have known back then, like who knew that Taylor Swift was going to be Taylor Swift, right?
Right,
Like,
right.
And one of the positive things that has happened from this is that other artists have become more aware about music contract and like the language that's in those contracts so that they can keep an eye out in order to try to own more of their music. One thing though that also kind of happened, which some people felt was not right, was just that how she talked about it being stolen, like music, stolen property, right? Where it's like people are like, well, it wasn't really stolen. It's just, it was sold. And that's kind of what happens, right? So it's just part of the process. But I think that kind of fit well into how she was portraying the situation and how her fans kind of came to support her throughout the process, right?
I can see both sides to that, though. I can definitely imagine feeling like, no, that was stolen from me. Like, that's my music and somebody else owns it. There's that intuition that doesn't make sense. And, you could take the other side of it where it's like, what if you're a musician or an artist that creates music? It does not do well. Your show didn't sell. You didn't develop a big fan base. Now, if you're in that position where you have a record deal, you create music, and you don't do well, then you as an artist aren't really losing that much money, right? Like part of the agreement is that the record label is taking on some of those initial costs. And it's kind of like you could take this argument for any company that raises VC funding. 'Cause part of it is like, well, if your startup crashes and burns, you as the founder, the early stage employees are not on the hook for that, right? That's why you got the funding. So I feel like it's not that dissimilar if I'm understanding correctly.
Yeah, that's the argument they make, right? So one of the things also to think about there is how Taylor Swift has kind of used her fan base and community to be what ended up helping her actually buy the masters, right? So not only in terms of being able to re-record her music and having fans actually purchase that, but then also in changing the way that people talk about it, right? Because that matters a lot, is the way that people are talking about it, the way that people see things, and then where the people kind of stand. And so one of the things here to also think about is the company that did own them, Shamrock Capital. They had them for like 3 years. They probably saw the winds changing in terms of like the actual value of, holding the music and how much money they were going to continue making. So for me, it kind of makes sense that they wanted to sell eventually and to have it be on a good, basis with, Taylor, right? Who ended up thanking them in her letter that she wrote, even saying that, she should tattoo their logo, a little shamrock on her forehead because she loves them so much, for, help, giving her music back, selling for 360 million. But there's only one way that they would have sold that. And that's by knowing that the value was going to decrease, right? Because of what she was doing with the re-recordings. And one thing I want to like call out there is that her fans and like her community has been growing since she started as an artist, right? Like she used to talk to them on like MySpace and Twitter back in the day. She used to have, parties with them like for her albums. So this has been a long-term relationship she's had with fans, but that had to change eventually, right? Because she reached the point that it was too much. Like the fans were getting, a little too parasocial with their relationship. So she had to kind of pull that back. But what started happening with these re-recordings is that she started writing, notes to them explaining like, hey, this is where I was thinking about it with, this album and with this song. Here's, what's kind of changed. She also included songs from the vault that weren't included in the original releases. So she really made it seem like a completely different experience for them, right? You're not just getting an album re-recording, but you're getting these things on top of it, right? So she created more value for her fans by giving them more access to the things that they want, which is like more special attention, more connection with her. She would include Easter eggs like throughout her Eras performances so that people would have to like keep track. Oh, like what's she wearing and what's she, singing and how is she singing this? That's how she announced her 1989 Taylor's version. She was at the SoFi Stadium here in LA and was performing in a blue outfit, which is how her fans were able to guess that this means she's releasing the Taylor's version of this, which if you think about it is kind of wild, right?
Yeah.
That like her fans are so engrossed in like what she's doing that they're always looking for these clues, right? So that was kind of like the brilliance behind the strategy of what she was doing here that no artist had ever done before, right? The Beatles didn't, Prince didn't, right? Like, but that just speaks to the levels of like her fandom and also understanding them and creating that community, right? Like we talk about community a lot because it's such a great way for you to engage with the people that like you and like what you're selling, right? But you can't just fake it, right? You can't just be like, oh, here, buy our stuff and just like always try to sell to them and not really engage with them. And I think that's what she's doing differently.
Right. I mean, she's an artist.
Right.
Right. Like, I mean, like, obviously, incredible businesswoman, but she's an artist. And I mean, I think where I would reject the cynical views of, oh, she took advantage of whatever your fandom. She's probably done more work for her fans than most or any artist has done before. All those clues that she gives, that's fan engagement.
Totally.
And you don't have to care if you don't want to, right? If you're not a hardcore fan, then you just wouldn't notice it. And that's okay. Nothing wrong with being a casual fan too, right? But it's like the implication that like she took more from her fans is like it's like that's not giving people enough credit in the sense that people didn't support Taylor's versions to be nice. People didn't listen to it more. They didn't buy the records. They didn't do it as a personal favor. Yeah. Like they did it because they're fans and they wanted to. And they love her music. It speaks to them. It's like hate it if you want, but lots and lots of people did this on their own volition. Okay, fine. If you want to be cynical, like sure, she does this work as an artist and businesswoman, but she's doing it for her fans too. Like the Eras tour, fans go to that show more than once because there's enough variation in each show that it's worth going back to again. Like that in of itself is really, really incredible.
Yeah. I mean, also think about the fact that the Eras tour was 2 years worth of her touring the world, performing multiple shows, per week. She never took a day off. She never canceled a show. She, obviously would go on like vacation to, take a break, but none of the shows were ever canceled. Actually, was there one show that was canceled because of that Brazil one?
Yeah, okay, because of some extreme event.
Right, because of the extreme, so none of them were canceled because of her.
Right. Yeah, she wasn't like
extraneous
issues.
Factors. Yeah, right. Which means, that she had to like, train for that for 2 hours, right? Each night she was performing for her fans. So the amount of planning and like work that goes into that, to say that it's just for money really removes the agency of her fans.
Yes.
like you said, the one thing too to also like call out here is she made them experiences that like brought a whole bunch of like-minded people together where they would create outfits for their to go to the concert, right? Like it used to be you just wear a band t-shirt and like that showed that like you were a real true fan, but a lot of the fans that went to the Eras tour would choose outfits and like make outfits in advance in order to like go and like be there. And I remember it being, sometimes at the time they would like say, oh, like, look at all these like women just like dressing up and like, um, going to like the tours, to like the concert. And I'm like, why are they like doing this? And I think this is another way that we denigrate female centric, industries and like art and, businesses, is by saying that like, oh, like, it's not worth it. It's not worth it to go to this thing. And it's like, well, but people are paying for it
Mhm.
voluntarily.
Yeah, it's not
Some
worth
of
it to
them,
you.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
People
or
are
like
paying
Dyson products, like
exactly.
$600 Dyson Airwrap
Yeah.
might not be worth it to one person.
Right.
It's definitely worth it to another person. That's
Hmm.
why they sell it.
Yeah. Yeah. Some people paying like exorbitant to like thousands of dollars to go to her tour. So that's a thing to really recognize here, that she has created this fan base that is willing to support her through multiple endeavors, right? Including the new music that like came out. And like, while some people may say that, oh, it's not, good or whatever, um, her fans enjoyed it enough and felt it was different enough to, voluntarily, pay for it and like help support her in that way. So I think it's a master class in her being able to like use her fan base
Yeah.
to do that, and
Yeah.
has in the process created and
Yeah.
made herself into a billionaire.
Totally. She created value for her
Hmm.
fans who rewarded her in kind. Like I think that's kind of, in that sense, it's
Yeah,
as simple as that.
exactly.
And with that, we're going to talk about another woman-centric brand. The last week, Hailey Bieber, she sold Rhode for $1 billion in cash, stock, and sort of bonus to Elf Cosmetics. So under the terms of this agreement, Elf will acquire Rhode for $600 million in cash and $200 million in shares of Elf Beauty common stock. And the deal also includes a potential payment of $200 million based on the future growth of the brand over the next 3 years. And already, we're seeing the takes from the D2C bros. Like, this is the masterclass in brand building. It's not a masterclass in brand building. Is it a huge success? Absolutely. It's a huge win, obviously, for Hailey Bieber, right? So when I say this is not a masterclass in brand building, and I said this on LinkedIn, and a couple people were like, wow, why are you tearing down women? It's definitely not that either. It's the wrong lesson, right? To call it like, oh, you should have just built this massive brand. Oh, see, this is how you do it. That's not the lesson. It's really not. I think if anything, maybe it's a masterclass in hiring the right people, right?
Which is very hard.
And it's very hard. Yeah, I don't even say. Yeah, I kind of giggled there, but I wasn't saying it pejoratively. It's hard to hire the right people.
Yeah.
Clearly, there are top performing operators who are running that company, and that is absolutely no shade to Hailey Bieber. That's incredible.
Honestly, I think part of the problem is people don't know how to categorize this, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. They don't know how to categorize it.
Yeah. So I'd say it's more a fault of like wannabe marketers trying to explain what happened in like basic marketing 101 terminology. Because yes, it was like a huge brand thing, but the brand aspect of it is not the part that you can copy, especially if you're not also a, Nepo baby that was a model that's married to one of the most famous men in the country. So like, let's talk about what you can take from this, right?
And I think a big thing here is like, I mean, look, there's clearly a product market fit. Rhode achieved over $200 million in net sales within 3 years. Clearly the product is doing well. That's the truth. I think the branding of the clean girl aesthetic, which is something that has gotten more popular across social media in the recent years, a sort of makeup-free type of look focused on like glowy skin, furry eyebrows. And I understand that not all of that is natural on people, like, of course not, but it's an aesthetic that is meant to look more natural. And that's very much in stark opposition to the previously prevailing aesthetic, which was like the Kim Kardashian aesthetic, right? BBLs, huge lips, huge eyelashes, huge, like, lots of makeup, right? This is not that aesthetic. I think Rhode and Hailey Bieber have done a good job at tapping into that new aesthetic because Hailey Bieber herself embodies the clean girl aesthetic.
Yeah, definitely one thing there is when you have a bunch of makeup out there that's supposed to make you look like Kim Kardashian, that type of makeup is not going to help you with the clean girl aesthetic, right? So you need new makeup that'll fit that aesthetic. And that's where, she was able to find that strategic positioning in, what's already a very crowded beauty market. And she was able to do that using her brand and like her popularity, which yes, stems from her being, a Nepo baby and married to Justin Bieber. But I really do want to call out here because I think this is brilliant product development and marketing twofold, which is the lip gloss phone case.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like the fact that it is a phone case created to only hold a Rhode lip gloss in it. I'm sure they're like dupes now, but the point is that when it first came out, it was to, hold a Rhode lip gloss. The like foresight it took to not only create the phone case, but to choose a lip gloss, it made it so it was a unique design that it was not, mascara, eye pencils, whatever, all that stuff is just usually rolled, right? So they made it into like this shape that, really clearly showed off that it was a lip gloss. So I remember that going viral because people were like, holy shit, like this is really cool. It became like a thing where it's like, you don't even, take anything but your phone case, right? Because it's like, you have your Apple cards and everything. So all that is in there. And the only additional thing that you needed was a lip gloss. Totally brilliant, right?
Absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Because to your point, you have Apple Wallet or your e-wallet purchasing options.
Mm-hmm.
You have a camera on your phone, so
Exactly.
that could serve as your mirror.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's on your phone.
Everything.
It can't help but
you
your
need
phone
a phone
is
case.
not your lip gloss, right?
Exactly.
Now it has the lip gloss. It's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it looks cool. It's legitimately convenient.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also not that expensive,
Mm-hmm.
which is great.
Yeah. It also fits the aesthetic, right? It's very, very girly, which I love because it's like, yes, I'm carrying my lip gloss.
Very minimalist.
And very minimalist. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it just like was the right product for the right brand and the right aesthetic and the right customer. Now, do I think that she was like the brain behind that, the genius behind that? No, but her team was able to create that. And to this day, it's still the number 3 product on Rhode. It's a bestseller and it still does a lot of the sales. So, that's the thing to think about there, creating a product that fits your brand specifically, because now you have to buy both, right? You got to buy the lip gloss and you got to buy the phone.
Yeah, totally. Oh, and I got to call this out for people who don't wear lip gloss, who might not know. The other functional reason this is so important is that of all the makeup, it's lip gloss or lip product that you reapply repeatedly throughout the day. It's lip gloss that after you drink, after you eat, throughout the day, it just kind of wears off. It's also one of the only makeup tasks that seems socially normal to do in public. Like if
That's
you saw
true.
someone with holding up their phone and fussing with their eyes, you might just think, oh wow, they're doing their eye makeup in public. But when you see someone with a compact or with their phone doing their lips, it looks more normal.
Yeah, that's funny. I hadn't really thought about that, but that's very true. Like the other stuff is like, whoa, you're supposed to do that at home, But the lip gloss is like you eat, you drink, so you got to reapply it. Sometimes, even if you are carrying a purse, sometimes you'll go out to lunch, like you just take your phone and you have your lip gloss right there. So another thing I want to touch on here is same thing we were talking about in the Taylor Swift section, right? That this is an industry perception problem where beauty innovations and female-centric industries tend to get less respect. A lot of the stuff that I was seeing were just like takes about like, why would like people, be buying this? Like she doesn't deserve it because it's beauty and like self-care. Like how shallow can you be? Like we were talking about it in the Dyson episode. Like these things are everyday problems that women face, right? So here are people providing solutions and making bank. Like maybe there's a lesson here for companies to start realizing, and for the media and for other customers. The problems are there. And if you want to start selling to consumers, you have to start creating products that serve them and don't make them feel as if like they're being shallow or they're, not worth having, products that like speak to them and that make them feel good.
Yeah. Reapplying lip gloss it's a recurring problem. You can laugh at it if you want, but it gets the job done. Again, if just because you don't have that need doesn't mean it's not important or not worthy of being fulfilled.
Yeah, definitely.
And the other point that I love that you made that I wanted to call out too was just really that notion that privilege and innovation are not mutually exclusive, right? We've alluded to Hailey Bieber being a Nepo baby, marrying one of the most iconic pop stars of our generation, really. Those things are true, but that doesn't mean that Rhode doesn't create good products, right? Like these are just two separate things. The quibble that I had, if anything, was just, whoa, Hailey Bieber is so amazing and like she's a genius and like wow, like brand building when it's those aren't even saying specific things.
Hmm.
Like if you want to
Yeah.
call her a genius, then fine, but then explain to us.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
But that's like I said,
yeah,
it's not
yeah.
her or the product or the sale or
Right.
anything. It's just people don't know what they're talking about,
Yeah.
which hello, welcome to social media.
Welcome to social media, where the most extreme or the takes that lack any nuance at all are the ones that take off.
Yeah, exactly. And then also, I mean, let's get to it as well. Just because she's a Nepo baby does not mean that it was gonna be inherently successful, right? Lots of Nepo babies put lots of things out there that are not
Yeah.
as successful. So the fact that it did sell for $1 billion,
Hmm.
banking her, was it $300 million? Like that deserves, maybe not respect, but at least
Hmm.
acknowledgement
Yeah.
that her name and her company was the one that did this, right? And
Yeah.
she's not the only one, right? Like Selena Gomez's also have like $1 billion company, Kylie Jenner's company. They've gotten to that point where they're also, billionaires and like have created this value for their customer. It's not that all of them are successful, but the ones that are, working towards doing that are
Hmm.
finding success again because they're, creating solutions to problems that their customers, and it's also stemming from problems that they themselves have probably faced, right? The best companies and ideas come from when founders have a problem and know a solution or a way to fix that problem, right?
Hmm.
So a lot of when I talk to clients, like that's a huge thing about part of the messaging that I try to get them to talk about, and their storytelling and positioning is like, well, what got you to think about this problem? And then why are you the best person to fix this, right? Like what about your experience and your background gave you insight into the problem? And then how are you going to create the solution for the specific type of person that you are? Because that usually starts out being like the first customers that you're going to be getting and then expanding from there.
Yeah. I think we also need to acknowledge the brand that I feel like really kicked off a lot of celebrities or influencers starting their own skincare and makeup brands, which is Rihanna and Fenty Beauty. Really major problem she was solving was that there were not enough makeup shades that were inclusive of black and brown tones.
Hmm.
So she created Fenty to address that very important problem. With Fenty Beauty's massive success, I feel like now that sort of shade and tone inclusivity is pretty much table stakes
Hmm.
in makeup brands now. Like I feel like in this, and I say this as somebody who has struggled for years to find a yellow toned makeup. It wasn't easy for me to find that until after Fenty became popular. We really got to shout out Rihanna for really kicking this off because yeah, I think it was after people saw Fenty become such a massive success that they were like, oh, maybe I should try to copy her. This episode is brought to you by Sequel.io, the only platform that lets you host webinars directly on your website. So this means that you can see what your audience does on your website before, during, and after your webinar, which gives you a lot more data that you can use for retargeting or when you're handing off sales. So learn more about this at sequel.io. All right, Instagram has some new news today. They announced that they are now defaulting to the 3:4 aspect ratio for posts. This probably means nothing to you, just hearing this off top of your head. Like, wait, what is that?
I'm like, what
So
is the difference between the ratio now and the new ratio?
So originally it was the square grid. That's what we all knew.
Mhm.
Then, with the launch of Reels, that more vertical format, 4:5 aspect ratio. But why is this important? It's important because the 3:4 aspect ratio is the default ratio in most smartphone cameras, which means the picture as you take it, that's what's going to show up on Instagram. I think that's a big deal because one, I mean, like it's showing how popular that vertical format is on Instagram, right? Most Adam Mosseri said that most uploads now are vertical. This could be easier for marketers and creators, right? Because now that you'll better know if that's going to look good on the Instagram grid. We're seeing this sort of native platform rewarding behavior. I've written a bunch of times about this notion of zero-click content, right?
Mhm.
Zero-click content is native to platform content on any platform that has standalone value, and it's produced in the way that it's intended to be. Examples of that would be an Instagram post, an Instagram reel, text only on a LinkedIn post, right? Typing out a tweet. Those are all native to platform types of content. And I feel like with this new change in Instagram, it's further bolstering that zero-click content, that native-to-platform content. As we see things like dark social, meaning the behaviors happening on social media not being really trackable or easily findable or easily attributable, that's becoming more of the norm. And there's going to be more and more of that need for marketers or content creators to really create those native to platform experiences. When I think about what Sequel is doing with their webinar platform, that's kind of interesting because now that's a native to platform webinar. It's directly on your website, which this could be a really big deal for, websites who have native experiences like an in-app website or a SaaS company, right? Where the software's on the website where you want to see like the users are already there. And if they're going to a webinar on top of that, then ideally you'll see all of the behaviors on that website as they're happening during your webinar.
Yeah. And this is great because the whole fact of you having to create different content from what your phone is actually doing and then having to make sure that you were positioning everything correctly so it didn't get cut off, it makes so much sense. Obviously, Instagram is not creating these things specifically for social media marketers and creators. Right. That wasn't the purpose of their original point of doing the 1-to-1 and the 4-to-5. But since so many people are creating stuff within their platforms, if it's making it easier for people to share content, then, I don't see a downside.
Yeah. What's also interesting is that 3-to-4 aspect ratio is kind of more inclusive of both pictures and videos, aka reels. Mm-hmm. So I think now in a feed, you're going to just see more symmetry in a given grid. I think it just kind of makes for a more cohesive looking experience.
Oh, I see. So, okay, if it fixes the fact that like reels look bad because it's like cutting off like the top because you're fitting it for the reels format, but when you're putting it on the main feed, it's like cutting stuff off, then like all the better. Yeah, I'm surprised that such a design focused company like Instagram let it go on for this long because like it is jarring to me to kind of see that difference on the main feed.
Yeah. That's a good point.
All right, on to our last topic. Oura just launched their Give Us the Finger campaign, which flips traditional anti-aging narratives and positions health tech as a tool for embracing age rather than trying to fight it, betting big on authenticity and counterculture messaging in a market typically obsessed with youth. So I kind of like the ads and the campaign. I think it's really smart of them to shift focus away from the younger demographic, older customers. They're the ones who have more of a reason to try to track a lot of their health and like any concerns that they have. That's one of the things that like I think about in terms of like the upside to Apple Watches, why we've gotten them for my mom, Nathan's mom, so that they can kind of keep track of what's going on with their hearts and making sure that they're like working out.
Yeah, I really want to just add to that we got my mom-in-law an Apple Watch a while back. Earlier this year, she and my father-in-law got into a car accident and they were pretty shaken up. And it was a bad enough accident that her Apple Watch called 911 for them.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's wild. Yeah. I have a friend whose dad was like at home, just like watching TV when his Apple Watch started going off, telling him, hey, you're having like a heart thing. So they called an ambulance and they said, oh, you're having a heart attack. So it saved his life, which is like, super cool. And I think those types of stories have kind of spread to a lot of millennials, which is that honestly, if I'm being honest, that was a huge impetus for why we got our parents the watches. The fact that, now they're going directly to those consumers as opposed to having to be like, well, oh, your children are bringing you these tech tools. Now we're targeting you directly as like, hey, take your health into your own hands, huh? So like to solve the problem for yourself. And then hopefully appeals to their like wanting to, be young and understand like new technologies so that they keep track of that by themselves. I also think it's like fitting into a thing that a lot of younger people are starting to feel, which is tracking fatigue. The younger demographics are kind of starting to question why they're keeping track of all these things. You have the 8 Sleep and you have the Apple Watch and the Oura Ring and, a whole bunch of other products that are like tracking your day-to-day, your life, your sleep schedule, how much exercise you're doing, what your heart is doing, when there's nothing you can really do about it. You can obviously, do more exercise, but like, I feel like there's a wall that you reach that beyond it, you can't really do very much. So by going after aging adults who already have these types of concerns, but haven't really found a tool to help them is a really smart way to open up a new market for themselves.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah. When I first saw the Give Us the Finger campaign, my first reaction was, oh, I don't hate it. But the more that I've sat with it, the more that I like it. Like, I went to their website today, saw they also have video called It's Good to Get Old. I love that.
Yeah.
I think that's really cool. It is good to get old. It's a blessing. It's wonderful. Like, that's something we all ultimately want to do. We all want to live longer and live healthfully, or at least, not in poor health, right?
Yeah.
It goes well with all the, longevity trends. I don't know if I want to call it a trend. I always hesitate to call health a trend, but like, we've seen longevity become a lot more popular in the recent 15 years. Or there's a lot more awareness around, oh, I want to live longer. I want to live better.
Mhm.
I want to take better care of my health today so that I can be a functional 70-year-old.
Yeah, I think that that's definitely such a smart play to this because it's starting to talk more about life and like living life and, enjoying it to the utmost, right? As opposed to having it be this thing that like makes you anxious. I think this serves also like the younger demographic that is getting a little too anxious about making sure that everything is exactly as it's supposed to, right? Like the fact that we're seeing people not drink alcohol anymore because their Oura ring is now showing that there's a little spike that peaks whenever they drink alcohol, or like they see it in their like 8 sleep. Some of that like it ends up being too much. Like yes, get your sleep and try to sleep as much as possible, but if you're making all these decisions based on like what a ring is telling you, or your Apple Watch is telling you, like maybe we've lost the plot.
Yeah.
So I like that they're changing the focus to be more about like live life and enjoy it to the fullest. I think what's also successful is the fact that, they're using a play on the words about it, giving us the finger, right? Like where it's like kind of doing it as a counterculture thing where it's like, oh, yeah, this isn't like the norm. It's not what
Yeah.
people usually do. So like, own your life and like be different, you
Yeah.
know, kind
The
of
other thing
harkening
I
back to
want to,
Apple's original Think Different campaign.
yeah. The other thing I want to call out was I saw somebody on social media ask, why is it the pointer finger? Like,
Hmm.
what? Like, give us the finger. Why that one? It's because you're supposed to wear the aura
Hmm.
on your pointer finger. But also, what I think is kind of cool about this campaign is that it kind of educates people on
Hmm.
how to use the Oura ring. I
Yeah,
used
yeah,
to
yeah.
have one and
Yeah.
I wore it on my ring finger because to me it was like a day-to-day wedding ring replacement. It wasn't until I bought the next generation ring that I really looked at the instructions and I was like, oh, I've been wearing it wrong like all this time. It goes on the pointer finger.
That's so funny. Honestly, I don't think it would have worked if they put it on the middle finger. I think it works because it's on the pointer finger. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, our culture and society is not ready to start using, like bad, profanity or like, bad language or, in like a major ad campaign like this. So I think it's smart that they did the pointer finger, not just because it's part of, what they need to do for their own brand, but because I don't think it would have played as well, especially for the demographic that they're trying to go after, the the
Yeah.
older folks.
Yeah. But I want to highlight a callback here. Well, I want to highlight it, but let you have the floor because you thought of it first.
Yeah.
We have a callback to a previous episode with this Aura campaign.
Yeah, so I wanted to highlight Amanda's Sketcher example a couple weeks back, where they're successfully embracing what Skechers did with like the dad shoe in terms of having it be uncool and having it have that uncool association is actually leaning into their authenticity. So I think it's actually going to resonate with their new audience. And it doesn't seem to be like they're chasing a trend. It's just really giving them a new tool to help them function in their day-to-day life.
Yeah, I agree. I love this idea of like um really leaning into that function of like what job is this ring, those
Mhm.
shoes getting done, and how can we really double down on continuing to serve that job.
Yeah, exactly. So let's end on a couple takeaways, starting with Taylor Swift. I think the big takeaway for me here is how do you engage with your community, with your audience and fans in a way that gets them to be on the journey with you? It's not just about selling your products to them, but engaging with them in a way that makes them feel like, yeah, I do want to spend another, $40 for music that exists in another format just so that I can support the person that I support. hear Taylor Swift.
Yeah, that's a great takeaway. The one I'll add, more the business takeaway of when you're creating IP, intellectual property, maybe think about like, we'll say creator and use that in the broadest sense. Think about the ownership that you have or don't have over your work and think about those implications later on down the line. Early on, you might be willing to trade off some of that ownership in exchange for the access or the capital to do more work. So it is really hard to strike that balance. So maybe what I'll just say is, be aware of any potential trade-offs you're making. Be aware of what ownership you have and don't have, and try to understand if it's right for you. And then, you know what? If you find out later down the line that it wasn't right for you, I back your work for $360 million. Easy.
There you go. Great business takeaway. That's easily followed by everybody that listens to this podcast.
Which brings us to our next takeaway with Hailey Bieber and Rhode. The next time you start a brand, just make sure to be born into a rich and famous family, be beautiful, and marry an iconic pop star. So just do that. And then also happen to create a brand and product that people actually really need and that they love.
Yeah. No, all jokes aside, here is the fact that they jumped onto an aesthetic that was popular at the time, really owned it and elevated it, and then created new and innovative products that didn't exist in order to answer to the market that wanted something. And I think it became very obvious because it took off immediately that like this was such a like missing product out there that like they were able to do because they understood their customers so much and didn't pander to them and didn't denigrate their needs in any way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really genuinely want that phone case now.
I know, right?
I really do. I think it's awesome. And then with the Instagram announcement, right, the 3 to 4 aspect ratio, you know, a big takeaway for me there is really the native to platform behavior. What are the ways that you and your brand can create that zero-click content? What are the ways that you can think about the way that your audience is consuming your content, and how can you best meet them where they are?
Yeah. And it just like follows, it's like what people, the behavior that people already used to and making it obvious within their own platform. For the Oura Ring, my takeaway there is that positioning and messaging is okay to change when you start realizing that you've kind of used up the one for the customer segment that you already have. So they went with tracking and like, you know, wanting people to know what was happening with their daily life, and are switching it now to a different messaging, which is like, we help enable you to live your life to the fullest, which I think is also a winning message that's going to work both for the new audience that they're targeting, the older consumer, but also the younger ones who aren't finding that like tracking is enough of a reason to keep buying a product that isn't adding value to their life in some way.
Yeah, I like that takeaway. It's like, it's okay to change your positioning. It's okay to change, but know why you're changing, be clear about it, and you know what? Win hearts and minds along the way. That's literally the whole point of marketing.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great way to end it.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a good way.
Yeah.
All right, friends, if you like this episode, please send us some Rhode lip gloss iPhone cases, and then also leave us a review. Just kidding. You don't have to buy us anything.
No, the reviews. Yeah, right. The reviews will be much better.
Yes,
actually,
much better.
We should start calling some of those out because a lot of you have started leaving reviews, which have been amazing. I want you to know that Amanda and I share each and every one of them amongst ourselves, and we've shed quite a few tears here and there of like, wow, people actually not only listen to it, but are learning from the content that we're creating, which is way better than anything.
Yeah. It is way better. So yeah, you know what? Thank you to everyone who has left a review so far. We really read all of them, and we pretty much cry over all of them. So thank you.
Awesome. Well, you can leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or like us on Spotify. If not, you can DM me at Sonia Baschez on Twitter, LinkedIn, Threads, Instagram, all those, or on my website at bendgrowth.co.
Cool. And then you can find me at Amanda Nat on LinkedIn, Threads, Instagram, Twitter, and my personal website, amandanat.com. And of course, you can also just visit the Meme Team Podcast website, which is memeteampodcast.com.
Awesome. Bye, friends.
Bye.